Gergana Prodanova, a young Bulgarian woman with eyes full of dreams, arrived in the UK in 2012. She yearned for a brighter future, a life free from the constraints of her small town. Gergana quickly found work as a chambermaid, her dedication shining through in her meticulous work ethic. Her colleagues admired her warmth, her gentle smile brightening even the most mundane workday. In the bustling city, she found a sense of belonging, a feeling that she could build a good life for herself. A chance encounter with a charming Bulgarian man, Costadin Kostov, would alter her life irrevocably. Their initial courtship was a whirlwind of romance, his attentiveness sweeping her off her feet. As months melted into years, the facade of Costadin's affection began to crumble, revealing the sinister reality of his controlling nature. His possessiveness grew with each passing day, transforming their relationship into a suffocating prison of fear and manipulation. He monitored her every move, his jealousy a venomous serpent poisoning their once loving bond. Gergana found herself trapped in a web of emotional abuse, her self-esteem slowly chipped away by his constant barrage of insults and belittling remarks. Her once vibrant spirit dimmed, her confidence replaced with self-doubt and a crippling fear of his unpredictable temper. The physical abuse began subtly, a hard grip on her arm, a shove disguised as an accident. These incidents escalated, becoming more frequent and brutal. Bruises blossomed beneath her clothes, a testament to his rage, each mark a brand of ownership. Fear became her constant companion, her laughter silenced, her movements guarded, her once bright eyes clouded with pain and terror. Trapped in a vortex of fear and despair, Gergana withdrew from her friends and family, her isolation deepening her sense of helplessness. February 2016 marked a turning point in this tragic tale. Gergana, unable to endure the relentless abuse any longer, found the courage to break free from Costadin's clutches. She left their shared apartment, seeking refuge in a women's shelter, a haven where she could finally begin to piece together the shattered fragments of her life. Away from his toxic presence, she blossomed, her strength returning with each passing day. She found solace in the company of other survivors, their shared experiences forging a bond of understanding and empathy. With their support, she began to rebuild her life, finding a new job and focusing on her own well-being. However, Costadin, consumed by a toxic cocktail of possessiveness and rage, refused to relinquish his control over Gergana. He bombarded her with phone calls and messages, alternating between pleading for forgiveness and spewing threats of violence. Fearful of what he might do, Gergana reported his harassment to the police, clinging to the hope that the law would protect her from his escalating aggression. On May 7, 2016, Gergana vanished without a trace, her sudden disappearance sending a ripple of fear through her circle of friends and the shelter staff. The police launched an investigation, their every instinct screaming that something was terribly wrong. The investigation into Gergana's disappearance quickly honed in on Costadin as the prime suspect. His history of violence against her, coupled with his erratic behavior following her disappearance, painted a damning picture. Despite mounting evidence, Costadin maintained his innocence, his calm demeanor a chilling counterpoint to the growing suspicion surrounding him. Detectives meticulously pieced together the puzzle of Gergana's last days, uncovering CCTV footage of Costadin lurking near her workplace on the day of her disappearance. Witnesses came forward, their testimonies revealing a pattern of controlling and abusive behavior that corroborated Gergana's own accounts of his cruelty. The discovery of Gergana's body in a park, hidden beneath a pile of leaves, delivered a devastating blow to those who knew and loved her. Her death became a symbol of a system that had failed to protect her, igniting a fierce debate about the prevalence of domestic violence and the urgent need for change. The trial of Costadin Kostov for the murder of Gergana Prodanova became a media spectacle, the courtroom packed with journalists, activists, and members of the Bulgarian community, all eager to witness justice being served. The prosecution presented a compelling case, detailing the harrowing abuse Gergana had suffered and the overwhelming evidence linking Costadin to her murder. The defense, in a desperate attempt to salvage their client's fate, argued that Gergana's death was accidental, a tragic outcome of a heated argument that spiraled out of control. Their pleas, however, rang hollow in the face of the overwhelming evidence and the heart-wrenching testimony of Gergana's friends and fellow survivors of domestic violence. The jury, after days of deliberation, reached a unanimous verdict: guilty. Costadin Kostov was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison, his freedom stripped away as punishment for his heinous crime. The verdict brought a sense of closure to Gergana's loved ones, a bittersweet victory that could not erase the pain of her loss, but offered a glimmer of solace, knowing that her killer would be held accountable for his actions. The tragic case of Gergana Prodanova served as a harsh wake-up call, shining a spotlight on the often hidden epidemic of domestic violence. Her story resonated with countless individuals who had suffered in silence, their voices muffled by fear, shame, and a lack of support. Gergana's death became a catalyst for change, sparking a national conversation about the societal structures that perpetuate violence against women. The media coverage surrounding her case prompted an outpouring of support for domestic violence charities, their helplines inundated with calls from individuals seeking help and advice. Gergana's legacy became intertwined with the fight for justice and equality, her name synonymous with the urgent need to break the cycle of violence. Her case underscored the importance of culturally sensitive support services, tailored to meet the unique needs of immigrant communities. In the wake of Gergana's murder, there was a collective sense of grief and outrage, a shared understanding that her death was not an isolated incident, but rather a tragic consequence of a society that often fails to protect its most vulnerable members. Her story ignited a firestorm of debate, prompting calls for legislative reforms and increased funding for domestic violence services. The government, under mounting pressure to address this critical issue, announced plans to review existing domestic violence laws, with a focus on strengthening the rights of victims and holding perpetrators accountable for their actions. The proposed reforms included tougher sentencing guidelines for domestic violence offenders, greater protection for victims who choose to press charges, and mandatory training for police officers and judges to better identify and respond to cases of domestic abuse. Women's rights organizations, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, organized protests and awareness campaigns, their voices echoing through the streets, demanding justice for Gergana and all victims of domestic violence. Social media became a powerful tool for sharing stories, raising awareness, and connecting survivors with support networks. The hashtag #JusticeForGergana went viral, amplifying the voices of those who had long been silenced. While the conviction of Costadin Kostov brought a sense of closure to the legal proceedings, the emotional scars of Gergana's murder ran deep. Her absence left an unfillable void in the lives of her loved ones, her laughter forever silenced, her dreams left unfulfilled. The trial, while necessary to hold her killer accountable, also forced them to relive the horrific details of her abuse and murder, reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal. The emotional toll was immense, a testament to the devastating impact of domestic violence, which extends far beyond the immediate victim, leaving a trail of shattered lives in its wake. Yet amidst the grief and sorrow, Gergana's memory served as a beacon of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Her story inspired countless individuals to break their silence, to seek help, and to fight for a future where violence against women is no longer tolerated. Her legacy lived on through the countless lives she touched, her story woven into the fabric of the movement for change. Gergana Prodanova's story, though rooted in tragedy, ignited a spark of change, illuminating the dark corners of our society where domestic violence festers. Her untimely death served as a potent reminder that behind closed doors, countless individuals suffer in silence, trapped in a cycle of abuse that often goes unnoticed and unaddressed. Her legacy fueled a movement, empowering survivors to find their voice, to break free from the shackles of fear and shame, and to demand a safer, more equitable world. The outpouring of grief and anger following her murder demonstrated a collective awakening, a refusal to accept violence against women as an inevitability. Gergana's name became synonymous with the fight for justice, her story a rallying cry for change. In the aftermath of her death, support organizations witnessed a surge in individuals seeking help, a testament to the power of shared stories in breaking down the walls of isolation and stigma. Gergana Prodanova's story serves as a stark reminder that the fight against domestic violence demands a multifaceted approach, one that addresses the root causes of this pervasive issue and provides a safety net for those trapped in its web. It is a call to action, a plea for a society where love is not a synonym for control, where vulnerability is not equated with weakness, and where seeking help is seen as a sign of strength, not shame. We must challenge the societal norms that perpetuate gender inequality, fostering a culture of respect and understanding that values the voices and experiences of women. Education is paramount, starting at a young age, teaching children about healthy relationships, consent, and the importance of challenging harmful stereotypes. Support services for victims of domestic violence must be readily accessible, adequately funded, and culturally sensitive. The criminal justice system must hold perpetrators accountable for their actions, ensuring that domestic violence is treated with the seriousness it deserves. The fight against domestic violence is a collective responsibility, one that requires the active participation of individuals, communities, and institutions.